Tonight, after several imperial military campaigns have come to a close, the Population Bureau has decided to reissue the census. Our coverage on your concerns continues.
And, is the blue milk you're drinking coming from the sources you think? The answer is a little hairier than you might think. At 11.
Welcome back, Galaxy, to another episode of Hoth Topics, a podcast about Star Wars. My name is Ian, and I am a Jedi Archivist. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, a surveyor for the Mining Guild, John.
Ayo.
John, how you doing, buddy?
I'm tired.
Yeah?
I'm very tired.
I'm finally back to fighting in San Diego Sabres. Had a fight last night, and yeah, definitely can feel like I haven't fought for a month and a half. One fight just wiped me out. So
have we mentioned that you borked your knee?
I don't know if we have, actually.
I don't think we've recorded in the month and a half that you were out.
that I borked my knee.
Yeah, he borked his knee.
Yeah, I went to do a lunge, and then there was a popping noise and pain and on the ground. John thought it was hilarious until I didn't get up.
Yeah, I thought he lost balance. Which would have been hilarious.
Yeah, in your defense, would have been hilarious. But so I haven't been able to do much fighting, but I'm back. I'm in good shape. Got the all clear. So looking forward to that.
I got to go fight with the SoCal Saber Academy up in Anaheim.
Yeah, with your cousin
week.
Aaron, right?
Yeah, my cousin bought all the Hasbro Force Effects blades when they came out. He bought like 3 of each one, and him and his buddies used to just beat the crap out of each other in the backyard. And those things
they're not
aren't
designed
made
for that.
Yeah, no, he has 5 or 6 with completely shattered blades, other ones that won't turn on.
Yeah.
But he's the one that actually got me to buy an Ultra Saber years ago at WonderCon, and we just never found a place for to duel up there. And Tom from SoCal Saber Academy came down came down to visit our school. I was asking him where he's from because everyone kept saying he's from LA. He's like, no. He actually lives a few blocks from my cousin.
Oh, that's
which
right.
Is crazy. So yeah, I went up there with my cousin. It was a lot of fun. Different rule set. They wear a lot more armor.
They had armor for you to borrow, right? I saw the photo.
Yeah. Tom had a duffel bag the size of this couch filled with gear. I don't understand.
It's a relatively large couch for those who cannot see the couch.
It's like 5 different chest protectors, 1 helmet.
Jeez. I figure that it's a good time to finish up the questions that we got from our audience, because last week we actually ran out of time, and we still have several more questions to get to. How does that sound to you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Content making is hard.
Content making is hard. Well, it's not really hard. We're just lazy. I think most of these questions, so about half of them are coming from my friends from my old Star Wars Guild group, and then a couple more from some of our regular listeners up in Idaho. Let's start off with Owen the Bro. Owen the Bro asks, how is Grandpa Palp gonna come back? I know in old comics he had clones of himself, but I don't know how he comes back. Now, if you're not up to date with the newest Rise of Skywalker trailer, this is referring to the laugh that's heard at the end of the trailer. And so we are getting into a little bit of speculation here because we don't actually know in what capacity Palpatine will be returning, if at all. There are several theories floating around out there. So John, what's your theory on this particular?
I've got 2. One kind of goes back to EU type stuff, and then the other one's kind of more recent. So the obvious answer, I think that most people think, is that he'll come back as some sort of Force ghost, or what are this called? Like
dark side spirits.
Yeah, since they're not ghosts, they're dark side energy that's focused on a specific item. Yeah, or
anchored to an object or a place.
So that's what it could be, which would just be a simple answer, and it would kind of go with the. I feel like the sequel trilogy has a lot more fantasy elements than the other 2 did.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
The other thing is we've technically seen him come back already in canon as what are they, Sentinels? Red robe dudes showed up in Battlefront.
Oh yeah, his messengers. Yeah, it's not him.
Dead.
It's just
They're called Sentinels or something like that.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Face of his that.
Yeah, just projects. A red robe droid that runs around and gives his dying wishes.
Yeah, it's either going to be the dark side spirit, which would bring in bring back some EU stuff, so EU fanboys could be excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just going to be super disappointing. It's going to be a robot with his voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my theories is the same as yours, the Darkseid Spirit thing, because we saw Darkseid Spirits in, going to EU sort of things. They were in some EU stories. They, in fact, I think they set up. I still haven't read the arc for the Vader comics right now, where Lord Momin comes back.
Mm.
There's like some time travel shenanigans in there, supposedly, but it's also he. Momin is Lord Momin is a Sith Lord, and I think he's anchored to his helmet.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a canon thing that happens. And then in Knights of the Old Republic, when you're in the Valley of the Sith and exploring those tombs, I think it's Ajunta Paul. He's an old Sith Lord who's trying to be repentant about his dark side stuff, and he's anchored to his sword, I think, or to his cave. So that's a thing too. So that I agree with that theory. I think that's the most likely. The other more likely scenario, I think, would be exploring more Force visions. So similar to Luke's experience in Dagobah and Rey's experience when she first touches the Anakin saber, Anakin/Luke's saber, which is now her saber, in The Force Awakens, where she has that sort of Force vision. But I really like the idea of Palpatine being this, malevolent spirit that's anchored to the ruins of the Death Star. I think that's a really cool thing. And like you said, it really appeases the fantasy, Forcey side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy that. I think that's those are both good ways to bring him back. I don't think they should do, secret clone stuff or anything like that. It worked for the old EU books, but I think that's kind of a trope that's a little worn out, It was a popular enough trope that now it's just kind of become a joke, evil twin, evil clone sort of thing. So, I don't know. What do you think about that?
About it not being a clone?
Mm-hmm.
I'll only accept it if it's a clone. If at some point on screen it shows Palpatine's name and there's an extra letter in it. as an homage to
Luke. Bigger Luke.
Oh yeah, Bigger Luke.
The Bigger Luke theory is amazing. Maybe it's one of those. Maybe it's none of those. We'll just have to see when the movie comes out.
Or maybe it's a Rogue One teaser and half that what's in the trailer isn't going to be in the movie.
Yeah, that's fair. So, okay, good little segue. Thank you, Owen the Bro, for your question. And moving on, Kin has a question. Kin asks, do you think Greedo was regular or extra crispy?
I mean, he was raw.
Unless they threw his body out into just the desert sun.
I mean, did he die? We only saw his arm.
No, he definitely died. What do you mean we only saw his arm?
Just his arm. Greedo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
He just got his arm cut off, and then we never saw him.
No,
we just saw his arm.
No, you're thinking of Walrus Man. Greedo, who got shot by Han.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Walrus Man.
Yeah, you're thinking of Walrus Man.
I'm 100% thinking of Walrus. His name is Ponda Baba, and you'll respect him for his life choices. I have to revisit the question as I was thinking about Ponda Baba.
Mm-hmm. So Greedo,
was he fried with plasma?
Was he regular or extra crispy?
Well, it depends on if blaster bolts are light or plasma. Because if it's light, then one could say he was fried. If it's plasma, he was probably broiled from the inside.
Mm-hmm. There is some smoke that comes off of him after he gets shot.
So he's still seared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then who knows? They could have just chucked his body out into the desert and then get a slow cook. I mean, Tatooine temperatures is probably like that thing, where you can cook
They
an egg on
probably
a
turn them
sidewalk.
into kebabs.
Oh God, I'm just imagining like Jawas like coming and scavenging his
No,
body.
I'm talking about the bartender.
Oh yeah, they just turn him into
They had
kebabs.
meat hanging in there, yeah. That's free meat.
That's
There's not a lot of meat on Tatooine.
oof.
So Ponta Baba raw,
Right.
burrito became a kebab.
Yeah. Seared and kebabbed.
Yeah, slow roasted and a kebab.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for your question. Moving on. Karth. Karth's asked questions before. Hi again, Karth. Karth would like to know, I know that Beskar was considered pretty rare during the Old Republic era, but did it become even more obscure by the time of the prequels, even though Mandalorians were still fairly active during this era? Beskar, for the uninitiated, is Mandalorian iron that Mandalorians make their armor bits out of. It is lightsaber resistant, I believe. Any thoughts on this one, John?
Only thing I can think of is by the time of the prequels, Mandalore had become a pacifist society.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time we ever see anybody in Mandalorian armor is the clans that didn't quite follow through with that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really get a good look at that side of Mandalorian culture. We're mostly just government, whatever Satine's doing, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And what Death Watch and Clan Vizsla. But in Rebels, we see that...
Sabine.
So yeah, thank you. I kept wanting to say Ren. Like, what's her last name?
Yeah.
No, this isn't Bajoran rules.
Mm-hmm.
We see that Clan Ren has their armor,
Mm-hmm.
and the other couple clans that we see still wear their armor. So if the family still continued the tradition of having their, like, heraldic armor or whatever...
Yeah.
And it seems like it's passed down.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
I could have sworn I remember something about Sabine saying that her armor's like 1,000 years old.
Sure.
It's just been remolded.
Yeah.
Per user or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think on Mandalore at least, or in Mandalorian controlled systems, there's probably a fair bit of it around, but it's probably not something that's mineable.
Yeah.
If it was a mineable substance.
Sure. And it's always been said that, Mandalorians are the only ones who know, like, the secret to
Damascus steel type thing.
Exactly. Though it is when you bring up Rebels and Sabine, there is enough of it that the Empire wanted to make a super weapon out of. If you remember, Sabine made that machine that like arc reactor thing.
It's not really a super weapon out of Beskar. It's
right.
a super weapon that controls Beskar.
Yeah, but it specifically like targets the alloy that is Beskar, and it plentiful enough that it's still a threat to Imperials. It'd be interesting to see if we get any more sort of lore about that in the upcoming Mandalorian series and the new season of Clone Wars, which will take place on Mandalorian parts.
I like the idea that it's rare, just because if by the time of Luke's Jedi Order, like, it's still super prevalent, then it kind of makes the lightsaber less of an imposing weapon.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just easy to acquire lightsaber resistant
right
material.
Yeah, and you can make the same argument with like Cortosis, because like Cortosis was everywhere during the Old Republic.
Yeah, like it made sense when the Mandalore was at war with the Order, because they needed something to counterbalance the disadvantages they had over the Jedi. So, they made armor that's resistant to the Jedi's weapon. They made jump packs so they could maneuver like the Jedi. They made, they made stuff to counter it. But that's like when there's a whole planet of Mandalorians and, however many thousands of Jedi running around doing their thing.
It was cool though to see that those traditions were passed on. I'm specifically thinking about the training sequence with Ezra and Sabine in Rebels, when Sabine is trying to learn how to use the Darksaber, and she ends up really applying her Mandalorian like Jedi hunting tactics into the way she uses that saber, with her wrist shield and trip wires and stuff like that. So that's a really cool kind of thing. So Hopefully that answers your question, Karth. Moving on, Lumi asks, when does The Mandalorian premiere on what network, and will we see any of our favorite characters in it? Well, to answer your question in terms of when and on what network, it will be streaming on the Disney Plus service, and the first episode comes out November 12th of this year, so 2019. As to whether or not we'll see any of our favorite characters, is IG-88 a favorite character of yours? Because
we don't know that's IG-88. It could be IG-88A or C.
Just look, it's networked intelligence. It could be, it's all IG-88, okay?
We are all IG-88.
Yeah.
All are one.
All are one.
All are droids, better than humans.
So, what do you, who would you want to see? Let's turn the question on its head. Who would you want to see in The Mandalorian if you could bring characters back?
All I want is live action Uncle Hondo, animated Uncle Hondo, poorly CG'd, cardboard cutout, just randomly inserted into any content. Uncle Hondo, we've seen that at Galaxy's Edge, that on the display screens in the Falcon, there is a live action Hondo.
He looks weird to me.
Telling you to do stuff.
Yeah,
also, he's
right.
a weird looking weak way.
Yeah, that's also true.
He could just look weird to you because you're so xenophobic.
I don't think we've seen a... Have we seen a live-action weak way? Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have.
In Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
They're all over Jabba's palace.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Maybe throw Sindel Tawani in there, just for the three of us out here that love the Ewok movies.
Yeah. Man, if you haven't watched the Ewok movies, at least the Battle for Endor... Like, give it a chance. Like, it's not good, but it's...
No, it's not. It's still one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's not good, but it is fun. And it feels Star Wars-y.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's...
It actually, I think it feels more this generation of Star Wars-y because, like I mentioned earlier, I think the sequel trilogy brings in...
More of the fantasy elements.
More of the fantasy element. And it's basically Lord of the Rings.
It's, yeah.
With Ewoks.
It's essentially The Hobbit, at least the first one, with Ewoks. Yeah.
But even still, the whole, don't look into the water thing, or you get trapped in the water.
Yeah. Well, bringing it back to things that might realistically actually happen.
How dare you, sir?
It would be cool to see the bounty hunters explored, like other ones that we saw in Empire. The Bosk or Dengar or characters like that.
What about Aura Singh?
She's dead, John.
What about Sam Weasel?
Also dead, John.
But is she? Because
yes.
she died in the movie, but then she came back in Clone Wars, and never made sense to me.
She died in the movie, but she came back in Clone Wars. Was it? Huh. I remember seeing her there. Could it just be another changeling?
I think they call her Zam.
Huh.
That always confused me.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that.
Come on, Dave.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that.
Maybe spend more time on continuity and less time on Wolves.
Wow.
I love you, Dave.
Shots fired. It could be cool to get Kira back, too. Because it's supposed to take place, 5 years after Return of the Jedi?
Yeah, 5 years after.
5 years after. So, you wouldn't even have to, make up her up. The actress, Daenerys... What the heck's her name? I can see her face.
Full disclosure, we've had to re-record this segment.
Yeah, this is the second time I'm struggling to remember.
In the 10 minutes that we could have looked her name up, he did not.
No.
And so...
No, I didn't.
Full disclosure over. If you scream it louder all at once, he'll remember.
Bloody,
Everyone put your hands in the air.
Bloody,
3, 2, 1, scream her name.
Amelia Clark! I got it!
We did it together, everyone.
Holy crap! I didn't even look it up.
No, it was the voices of people from the future listening and yelling her name through time.
It legitimately worked.
It was legitimately annoying me that there's a laptop next to you that at any time you could have used to look up her name.
I didn't want to interrupt our flow. But, yeah, no. So that's thank you, Lumi, for the question. Alright, moving on. Taylor, another avid listener of the podcast. Taylor, thank you for asking some questions. John, what are your thoughts on the new episode 9 photos? The ones that came out in Vanity Fair.
I don't trust them. They're promo photos. It doesn't mean that they were taken from a specific scene or even on set. It could have just been a green screen thing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that there are photos.
Mm-hmm.
I like some of the cast's new costumes. Many members of the cast have the exact same costumes that they've been wearing, or at least very, very similar. I mean, Ray's outfit just changes colors between movies, but it's like it's pretty much the same thing.
Well, not necessarily, because she has her cream-colored vestments in the first movie, and then she did. Oh, then she had the travel
island journey.
Yeah, the island journey, and then she had a way more Jedi-like when she went to face Snoke and Kylo, and then in the new one, it seems to be more of a combination of like the island journey and the like her original thing, because it's not as like she still has like the flowy scarf bits, but there's more like sort of she's got the high collar on the undershirt sort of thing. So, but I mean, character identity is important in costuming. So, but yeah, I get your point. It honestly it hasn't changed.
Yeah, they're just to me they're just promotional shots. Unfortunately, as much as I love Rogue One, that movie kind of ruined these things for me because we got so many great shots in the trailer.
Well,
and, then we got a different movie.
Yeah, I mean that was
so that kind of spoiled me on promotional material.
That was a reshoot issue, though. That wasn't so much photos, but yeah, I agree with you.
One could say this is a reshoot. Click.
Yeah, well, I think
it's a photo.
I really liked the sort of the behind the scenes shots that were taken, like the ones where they're obviously on set and like the director's there and talking to the actors, and you see like them astride the new space horses with all the dots on their faces and stuff for the CG to be added in. Like that's cool. I enjoy those shots. I agree with you that any of the more like posed pictures should be taken with a grain of salt. Like that one of Rey and Kylo like in a rainy area like fighting, like, and especially the one of like Luke standing next to R2. These are all things that could appear, but I wouldn't necessarily count on them being there. So I agree with you. They're cool to have, but they're not necessarily like super what's the word I'm looking for?
Accurate?
Yeah, I guess. Taylor also asks, any recommended canon reading?
Thrawn. I like the Thrawn books.
I've already turned him on to both the Thrawn books.
Read them again. You'll find new stuff.
Master and Apprentice is supposed to be very good. Friend of Show Tim was kind enough to get me a copy. I have not read it yet because I still haven't finished Thrawn Alliances, and I can't find it. I'm going to try to find it and finish that before I start reading Master and Apprentice, but I've only heard good things about it, and there is an audiobook version, because, Taylor, I know that you very much enjoy audiobook versions of these things. So yeah, Master Apprentice is good. There's a new Dooku book out that kind of goes over his fall, I think, which should be very interesting, because as you've may have heard on this podcast, John and I are both fans of Dooku for his being one of the few Sith that actually seemed like he honestly believed he was doing the right thing.
The best kind of villain.
Mm-hmm. As we've stated many, many times on this podcast. Let's see. There is a third Thrawn book that was announced. I'm not entirely sure when it's coming out, but it is coming out. And it's going to go over basically the last what happens during Thrawn's encounter with the Phoenix Squadron folks, I believe.
I haven't really heard anything about bad new canon books.
Yeah,
from people that have read them.
Yeah, I agree.
So, like, I don't really have, like, I can't say one's good or one's bad because so far they've all been on the same level, so there's no...
Yeah.
There's no way for me to rate it.
Yeah.
Rate it right.
The Aftermath series is supposed to be good. Like, the problem is there's so much Star Wars content to kind of consume that, you know, I just haven't, you know, I have to pick and choose, you know, like, kind of what. So I've kind of gone deep into the comics because that's kind of easier for me to just buy a collection and read through that than it is to get a whole book because I don't read as much as I should or used to. But, yeah, there's maybe I'll look into the audiobook thing myself because I do a lot of driving to Los Angeles and back, and that could be a good way of spending my time. But yeah, so pretty much any new canon stuff is worth it. And then there's also some old canon, you know, there's some legend stuff out there too that you know, if you haven't read it or heard of it before, it's just as good and fun as the new canon stuff. But I understand if you're kind of trying to stick to new canon because that's, like, you know, the ongoing story. Oh, and isn't there a book about, like, Black Spire and, like, connecting the new Disney kind of era, Galaxy's Edge era to the storyline?
I am sure there is.
Did you ever read any of the From a Certain Point of View stuff?
No.
No? Okay.
I own it. It's in my bathroom. I've never popped it open.
So that's like more of an anthology of collections that may or may not be canon. Real. Yeah. But that could be interesting as well. Yeah, okay. And Taylor's last question is, obligatory, is mayonnaise an instrument? Question. I believe we've answered this before. My stance is anything's an instrument if it can make noise.
The question is, for me personally, do I have to play it, or is it being played by someone else? If it's being played, much like with sandwiches and mayonnaise, if it is being applied by someone else, I'm fine with it. But I, however, have no control over mayonnaise and usually will ruin a sandwich or a musical piece. Okay.
So what you're saying is you're fine with mayonnaise if somebody else is putting it into their trombone, right? But you wouldn't put it into your trumpet or trombone.
Well, like some people know the appropriate amount of rock to play with the mayonnaise, where I am going to turn it up to 11.
Right, regardless of where it needs to be.
Yeah, regardless if it's appropriate to be doing so in the middle of a mayonnaise center.
Fair enough.
Guitar
Fair
center.
enough. Not Star Wars related, but now I hope you know a little bit more about mayonnaise and its musical properties. All right, and our last question, John.
Me.
Randy asks, why are Ahsoka's lightsabers white in Rebels?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you handle this because you're a Forcey person.
Yep. So, to my understanding, essentially, after the battle on Mandalore, Ahsoka acquires 2 sabers from some of the Inquisitors, I believe. She acquires 2 Inquisitor sabers. And the new canon method of getting a red lightsaber is to channel Dark Force energy into the crystal and causing it to, quote-unquote, bleed Dark Force energy, which turns it red. Ahsoka got these sabers and essentially like reversed the process by channeling positive force energy into the crystal and stopping the bleed, I guess. And the result was white sabers. There's also some stuff about like crystals aren't just a color when you pick them now. They attune to the user, and they're basically mood rings, and I don't like it. But that's a story for a different time. But that's that. To my understanding, that is why those sabers are white in Rebels. All right, very cool. Well, John, those are all of the questions that we had coming up from our last questions episode. Do you have anything you'd like to add or talk about today before we close up shop?
Not really.
All right. Very cool. Well, if you have any topic ideas or things that you want to hear us go a little bit more in depth on, or maybe do a analysis of, please let us know. And there are a couple ways that you can do that. You can send us a message at hothpod@gmail.com or tweet at us on the Twitters at hothpod, or you can head over to our website, hothtopicspodcast.com, and shoot us a comment on there on any of our episodes, articles, and opinion pieces that we have up there. John, I think you are just finishing up a piece, and that should be
almost, I got to go through it a couple more times.
Sure.
It's very rambly and wasn't written in chronological order and not edited in chronological order. So
you did it like a movie.
I did, except it's each different segment of the piece has its own like format.
I see.
So I got to go back through it and unify the formatting so I'm not just rambling through the whole thing.
We couldn't have done any of this year-long experiment without the input from you, our lovely listeners. So please continue to interact with us, continue to ask questions. We are more than happy to answer them and talk about what you want us to talk about. I think that's just about going to do it for today, eh, John?
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Well, I've been Ian.
I got to change the brake pads on the front of my car.
Didn't you already do that?
Well, I only did one side.
Well, that's John, and he's got stuff to do.
I couldn't get to the other tire.
I gotcha.
There.
John's got automobile issues to deal with. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next time.